Stone Paxton Music and Life. Welcome to the Music and Life podcast, The Couch with Stone Paxton. Welcome to the Music and Life podcast with your host, Stone Paxton. And this podcast is something that I've been planning for many, many years. Many people have asked me to do it, and I've been saying, no, I'm not going to do it. But I decided, why not? I am an expert in the field of distribution, in the field of production, in the field of having record companies, marketing, promotions, and setting up small tours for bands and artists and record labels, because I've done that for my own labels. I've done that for my own artists through the years. So my career started in the 80s, for those of you that want to know who I am, for those of you that are tuning into this podcast. And you're like, who in the heck is this guy? Who is this guy talking? My career started in the 80s, you guys. I started with a group called Trey. We called ourselves The Real Entertainment. We were managed by a management company, one of the biggest management companies in the business, which was called Dick Scott Entertainment. They had Ducky Fresh, they had Brenda K. Starr, they had Snap, and they had the New Kids on the Block. And that was the management company that managed our careers. Or shall I say, that was the beginning of my career in the music industry. Not only that, I get a lot of artists talking to me about distribution and how long I've been able to last in this business. And honestly, lasting in the music industry is a level of preservation and consistency. You have to persevere through the good times and the bad times, because you never know what's going to come in this business. All kinds of obstacles in the music industry, and you definitely have to be spiritually grounded, mentally and spiritually grounded, you guys. I've been able to stay in this business. I'm 54 years old. I've been able to stay in this business since I was a kid, and it's because of the moves that I have made, the business moves I've made, and the relationships that I've built. So we're going to talk about distribution, because a lot of people want to know who is the right distribution and what's the right distribution, and having a record company, and should I have a record company or should I not have a record company, and what's the importance of having a record company, or what's the importance of having a production company that's acting and posing as a record company. These are the things I'd like to cover, because this podcast will cover anything from music politics. I will have guests and all kinds of cool people on my podcast, but today we're going to cover distribution, because that's something everybody's been asking me about. So I started my record label back in, and you have to I've been in the music industry, so don't forget, you also keep in mind that I've been in the music industry since 85, 86. I started my own record label in 1995. Now, before I started my own record label, I had no point of reference as to what was the right or wrong thing to do. I kind of did, because we were managed by a management company that was a huge management company in the music industry, but they didn't teach us about running a record company. Everything was about recording and production and being an artist. So running a record company was something I fell into and had to learn as I went, you guys. Unfortunately, I had to learn as I went. But good part about it was I was still in the business, and I was learning while I was still in the business. While trying to have my own record company, I was learning at the same time. I started at a time when there was physical distribution. So the only way you were going to get a record in the stores is if you had physical distribution, and most of the major record labels back in the 80s and 90s had the physical distribution on lock. The only way you would get a record in the store was something called consignment. So what I did was I hired this guy named Marcus. I'll never forget Marcus. Marcus, here in Las Vegas, Marcus lived in Las Vegas, and he worked at Warehouse Records. And I hired Marcus I kind of studied him. I used to go into the record store and check him out and watch some of the stuff he was doing. And I knew that what I was doing was a lot of work, and I needed somebody that was going to be able to help me with a lot of the mailing of the CDs and talking on the phone to the buyers at the stores, because that's how it would work with physical records. You have to deal with the buyers. Each store across the country would have a buyer. And so the buyer, you would have to talk to the buyer and convince that buyer why they should buy your records, why they should put that record on the shelves in those stores Why are you more important than some of the major artists that they were pushing at the time? Why should I take a chance on you? And then if I take a chance on you, I'm probably not going to buy a lot of records. And so you had to have what you call a one sheet. Now, the one sheets are still relevant to this day. And a one sheet would be almost like a little bio synopsis of what the project was or what the single was or the record. It would give you like a little small little autobiography of the song and the artist and what kind of marketing, concepts they were using to break that record. And the buyer would look at that and he would use that one sheet to place his order. Okay. So the one sheet could make or break a project, whether a distributor or whether a record store on consignment would actually go into business with you and buy your product. And then when they would buy it on a 30-day cap. Now, this whole conversation I'm having leads up to where we're at now in the digital age, okay? So back then was consignment. If you didn't have a major record deal, you had to be good at getting a consignment deal. So I had a lot of consignment deals across the U.S. I used to have Marcus. Marcus would come in maybe 2 days a week. I had a building on Charleston and Eastern here in Las Vegas. Marcus would come in 2 days a week. He would do the calls and the mailing, and I would work 3 days a week doing the calls and the mailings. Also, my recording studio was in the same building. So we would cut the records, and then I would package it, we would press it, and we'd get on the phone, and I'd talk to the stores about, if they can carry the product, and sending them the one sheet. And they would say, send us the one sheet. We'll look at it and, listen to it. If we like it, we'll purchase some, but we're only going to do 2 or 3. They would do small amounts. They wouldn't do like 100. These are like very small amounts. And it was a very complicated, simple, but complicated system the stores had back then. So we would cut the record. My studio and my office and everything was all in the same building. So we would cut the records, press it, and then I would get on the phone. I would start with Vegas. I would go to the stores here in Las Vegas, and I would talk to the buyers about getting the record in the market, always, because you had to start with the market you were in first. And I would convince them, and they would take a chance on the record. They would buy, since it was a local store, typically they would do 5 to 8 pieces at a time. But the stores that were in different states like Arizona or California or New York, they were only buying 2 to 3 pieces at a time. And it was such a complicated situation with the stores that were out of town, because what they would do was you ship the product to them. They would send you back a piece of paper. You sign that paper, then you send that paper back to them, right? And that paper would have all the information about how many pieces they were taking in. Of course, I would send an invoice with the package, but they had to send me back one to sign with the official Warehouse Records or Sam Goody logo on it, and we would send it back. And then after that, they would say, okay, if it sells, we'll send you back a piece of paper to sign. Then we would send that paper back to sign. And then when it sells, they would actually send the check after they say, okay, it's a 30-day cap. And they would do everything on the 30-day cap. 30-day cap is 30 days. If it doesn't sell, it gets shipped back to you. So if it's sold in the 30 days, they would send a piece of paper. We sign that it sold and the amount that it was sold for, send it back, and they would send us a check, and it would come from the corporate office of Warehouse or Sam Goody. Now, take in mind, this was a time that was very complicated for music. This was a time where it was so confusing, because like I said, if you didn't have the knowledge of knowing how to get that record in the store, it wasn't like now. Like everybody has it made. It's so easy with music now, because all you got to do is cut the record and then upload it, and boom, it's worldwide. Artists are so lucky right now, because they didn't have to go through the things that I had to go through as a record company owner and as an artist pushing other artists. So that would sell, and then you would repeat that same thing over and over again. So if I wanted Sam Goody, so you had Warehouse Records back then, Sam Goody, you had, I'm trying to remember some of the regional record labels here, not record labels, but record stores here. I think Zia Records, they were like Arizona, they were like in niche markets, New Mexico, and you'd have to do that with all the stores. So if you walked in the mall back then, Sam Goody and Warehouse Records and Tower Records were like the number one. So if you wanted it in all those record stores, I would have to repeat. I had to repeat that same process over and over again to get those records in all the stores. And I did that with all my projects, all my rap artists under my label back then. I did that with my R&B artists. I did that with, and that was the process. Fast forward to the future, when the Orchard was a part of the beginning of digital distribution with iTunes, and that whole thing started. 1999, the digital revolution began. And I was on the front end of that, you guys. Now, you got to remember, I told everybody about this. I told E40, I told D-Shot and E40, their brothers. I told all kinds of people in the music industry about this. A lot of heavyweights. I said, oh, man, you guys get prepared because music is about to change, man. The future of music is going to be digital. And you know, it's going to be no more stores. And people thought I was crazy back then, you guys. I'm that guy who's always 20 years ahead of time. People thought that I was crazy by predicting that stores were going to close. And people would say, nah, man, stores are never going to close. And I was like, okay, I'm just telling you what I know, man. It's about to happen, because I was on the front end. I knew what was happening because the Orchard would be sending the emails about all the different things that are going to happen in the future. And I had already had my deal with them. So I was trying to share this with artists and labels and industry people to get them prepared. And nobody was prepared for the digital revolution. When the digital revolution happened, people were caught off guard. Record stores were caught off guard because people stopped buying records eventually, and everything shifted, and stores started to close, and people that were owed money from the physical records weren't getting their money. And a lot of the one-stop distributors who were the go-betweens, the stores and the record companies, they went out of business. So a lot of people were owed a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money. And I was already on the front end of that, you guys. I was on the front end of that digital revolution, prepared, ready to go. I already had records in the system, just ready to move. Nobody saw it coming. At that time, I was unsure, because I remember seeing my money bottom out on the physical, and I was worried. I was wondering what was happening because my money wasn't coming through. But at that period of time, that's when the transition was changing from the physical to the digital, because now you have 80%, 85% digital now. And there's still stores around the world, but those are typically collector record stores who have like old vinyl and stuff like that. And then for the labels that are still doing limited physical, like now everybody's doing vinyl again. Those stores were for that purpose. And those stores that are still around are for the purpose of those fans who still want to tap into the vinyl and physical records. You understand what I'm saying? So I was on the front end of that, you guys. I always tell people, I know I look young, but I've been doing this a long time, and I'm very well versed in this business and what I do. That's how I've lasted this long. So now, fast forward, we're in this digital revolution. It's still relatively new. We've been fighting for more royalty percentages for artists to get more royalties as far as streaming wise, and that's something I think that artists should be paid more money than what we should be getting from streaming. We should be getting $1 per stream. Seriously, we should be getting $1 or $2 per stream, because why not? You know, we can go in the store and you can records would sell for $10, and back then the artists were getting 5 cents, that old school model of how record companies used to run things. But independently, you can get that full $10. You know, you can get at least $9, you can get $8, you can get 3 or 4. Artists are spoiled now, but with having more power comes other things, you know, other situations, to where now artists can't quite get a stronghold of the Spotify thing, because if an artist makes serious money, first of all, artists should be able to make a living off of their music. You know, the 0.00 stuff and all that sense. I mean, you know, you can make money, but you have to really have some serious records out to really make money. Now, can you make money independently? Can you make money from distribution? You can, but you got to have a lot of catalogs. It's called catalog power. That's what I call it. You have to really get in the studio and work. But at 0.1, 0.2, you know, when you're getting paid such a low amount of money, and I'm just giving you a general example, it's hard for artists to make money unless, once again, you have a catalog. And when I say catalog, I'm talking about, you know, 600-700 records out. Then you know, by default, you see money, because it's really a numbers game, you guys. This digital world is more of a numbers game. You don't have the same level of what you're dealing with in the digital world as you were with the physical world. You don't have to have the record stores to try to make these sales now. It's all digital. You just have to have product out there, and you can pick and choose what you want to market, and then the rest of the stuff is filler stuff. Just catalogs out there for your records so that you can increase your bottom line, which is make a living off of your music. So this digital revolution has been a blessing, but it's also a kind of sort of a curse for artists, because the major labels have figured out a way to say, okay, well, we're going to go and buy Spotify. We own Spotify now. And for the artists that are not out here earning their streaming, and you got all these artists that are using bots to manipulate the system, and now Spotify has made changes. They're docking the distributors for those bots, and then those distributors are docking the artists. Not only that, they're going to take your records down. So if you're using bots to manipulate your streams, be careful, because Spotify does have a new rule, in Apple, that they are striking artists, and it doesn't matter what distributor you'll go to after that. Soon as your name pops up in the system, it's going to lock it down. So let's say you went with one company for distribution, and then you got shut down. Your mind is to think, oh, well, man, I'll just go sign up with Woo Boo Boo over here, right? And you go sign up with this company, Woo Boo Boo, and Woo Boo Boo hits you with an email saying, hey, man, yeah, your record can't be distributed, because Spotify and iTunes have already striked your name. So don't think that you can be slick and go to another distributor, and because you got shut down with one, they took your record down. When you go to another one, it's going to be the same situation. You're going to post up that same record, and it's going to be the same thing. And more than likely, your name in general will be sparked as a strike, and you can't distribute. So you got to be smart about that part with distributing your records. Make sure you're using an organic promoter. And if you need to know more about that, just, message me in my inbox. I do help artists set up their marketing and promotions and distribution, and even radio play to get their record played. There's strategies you can use with and combine with your distribution to create attention, to get what you need to get to market and promote that record the proper way without paying for all these bots. And you're going to spend $200, $300, $100 thinking you're going to get a 100,000 streams, and then all of a sudden, bam, it gets shut down. You have to be careful with the streaming with Spotify artists, because they have changed all the rules and regulations, and they are no longer allowing, they never really allowed it, but they're being very strict on the bots, that you guys are paying people offline. You guys are paying people off of these random sites, or people that are hitting you up on Instagram saying that they can increase, that they can increase your stream. So you have to be very careful with that. You want to have a clean slate with your distribution so you don't have any future issues with releases, okay? So make sure you pay attention to that. Also, when you are distributing a record, distribution is very important, but the promotions of your record is important as far as the rollout, the first week of your record. If we're going to get into future podcasts, people ask me, how can you chart a record on Billboard or iTunes? We're going to get into that in some of the next episodes. We'll talk about that in some of the next episodes on how to chart the record, on the recipe of charting the record, to setting the record up properly to be able to chart, because there's a recipe to charting the record. So we're going to make sure that we go over that and discuss that one-on-one, not too in detail, because I'm going to save some things for people that want to consult with me, because it's important for it to be done right. So those things have to be explained in a conversation with my consulting. Now, the subject is distribution. I've covered a few things in this conversation. Whatever I don't cover, leave some comments at the bottom and things that you want me to talk about. I will discuss those things. I have over 38 years in the music industry, 40-something years in the music industry. And so I've worked every angle from production to mixing, producing, touring, setting up tours, marketing and promotion, setting up radio. The reason for me doing this podcast, once again, you guys, is to bring awareness to artists, to educate artists that do not understand about music distribution, marketing, promotions, from the production, studio, mixing, to the record coming out, to stage, and to touring. That's what Stone Paxton Music and Life podcast is about. So make sure you like, subscribe, but more so, make sure you become a member of Stone Paxton Music and Life. And this podcast is brought to you by Brand Artist Coalition. Make sure you click that link at the bottom. All you artists looking for music distribution, click that link at the bottom. Also, if you're looking for one-on-one consultation, make sure you email me. At the bottom is my email address. For all those that appreciate what I'm doing, make sure you become a member to this channel. Send this to your friends. If you're a member, you've already subscribed. This video is only available to the members of my site. Stone Paxton Music and Life Podcast, The Couch. I'll see you on the next Music and Life Podcast. Peace.